In Luke 17:11, Jesus is on the way to Jerusalem, a journey symbolizing his approach to the climactic fulfillment of Israel's redemptive history. The encounter occurs between Samaria and Galilee, a deliberate literary detail showing him in a borderland, neither fully Judean nor Samaritan, but standing between Israel's divided territories. Luke's framing is significant. Jesus moves toward Jerusalem, the covenant's epicenter, while momentarily positioned at the threshold between the north and south, the pure and the mixed, the accepted and the excluded. This setting underscores the transitional nature of his ministry, the restoration of a fractured Israel on the eve of covenantal consummation. Geographically and symbolically, this location represents Israel's internal division. Galilee evokes the northern regions historically associated with the dispersed tribes, looked down upon by Judean elites as spiritually inferior per John 7:52. Samaria, meanwhile, stands for a hybridized remnant of that same northern house, descendants of Israelites and foreign settlers following the Assyrian exile per 2 Kings 17. Together they depict a single covenant people fractured by lineage, ritual boundaries, and competing centers of worship. The 10 lepers appear in precisely this border zone, embodying the condition of covenantal Israel, defiled, divided, and awaiting restoration. Under the Mosaic law, leprosy rendered a person ritually unclean and excluded from the congregation per Leviticus 13-14. This physical condition became a vivid symbol of covenantal defilement, a visible expression of Israel's spiritual estrangement from Yahweh due to disobedience per Isaiah 1:5-6. In this light, the 10 lepers represent the nation's collective uncleanness. Their distance, standing afar off, mirrors the language of exile, where Israel was said to be afar off from God and his sanctuary. See Daniel 9:7 and Ephesians 2:13. Their cry, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us," thus echoes the prophetic longing that God would sprinkle clean water on his people and make them whole again per Ezekiel 3:6-25. The number 10 is not incidental. In Scripture, 10 often signifies wholeness or totality, as in the 10 Commandments or the 10 Plagues. Here, it functions as a representative number for all Israel, the complete covenant people in their defiled state. Within this group, the 9 symbolize the majority of Israel who experienced outward renewal through law, temple, and ritual, yet failed to turn in faith to their Messiah. The one Samaritan represents the believing remnant, those once considered outsiders, but who recognize the true source of cleansing. Together they illustrate how Israel's covenant community was being redefined, not by descent or ritual purity, but by recognition of and faith in the Messiah, who alone could cleanse and restore. Only one leper returns to give thanks, and he is a Samaritan. In the Old Covenant world, Samaritans were outcasts, viewed as neither fully Jew nor Gentile. Yet Jesus commends this man's faith above the rest. Luke records him calling the man a foreigner, allogenes in Greek, a term generally used in the Septuagint for non-Israelites or outsiders, sometimes in neutral, sometimes in pejorative sense per Leviticus 22:10. By employing this word, Luke highlights the irony that the one deemed least eligible to approach God becomes the model of covenant faith. This Samaritan therefore stands as a type of redefined covenant membership, once excluded under the law, now cleansed and accepted through faith. He anticipates the prophetic promise that God would call my people those who were not my people, per Hosea 2:23. By contrast, the 9 who did not return represent unbelieving Old Covenant Israel, a people who received external cleansing but refused to acknowledge the true high priest in their midst. Their ritual obedience without faith mirrors Israel's broader failure to respond to God's visitation. The Samaritans' gratitude, on the other hand, prefigures the faith of those once estranged, diaspora Israelites, proselytes, and other outsiders from within Israel's covenant structure, whom God would include through the new covenant. In this sense, the episode reveals how covenant identity was being transformed. Faith, not genealogy, marked the boundary of the restored people of God. Thus, this part of the story is far more than a moral lesson in gratitude. It is a living parable of Israel's covenantal reconstitution. Jesus, standing between Galilee and Samaria, embodies the unifying bridge between Israel's divided houses. The 10 lepers signify the nation's corruption and exile. The single returning Samaritan reveals who the true heirs of the kingdom would be, those within Israel's covenantal framework who recognized and glorified God in the person of the Messiah. Through this event, Luke portrays the restoration of Israel's scattered, diseased body, healed and made one by faith, not by bloodline or ritual purity.